was, what are we? Late into March 2024, and we're here with Andrew Evans, who goes by Scalagrime on the Truckers Report, TTR. How are you today, Mr. Evans?
I'm doing fine.
Where are you from?
As best I can. I'm out of Elkhart, Indiana.
Okay. When did you start driving a truck?
It should be 2012, January, I want to say 9th or 10th.
Okay.
As best I can remember.
What led you to trucking?
Mostly not being able to work for my father, and I went home, and my wife signed me up for trucking school, and that put me into trucking.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got a crash course in exactly how much fun flatbed can be in the snow and ice in winter. Immediately.
So flatbedding was the first kind of trucking you did?
First and, well, I would say only, but I think I have pulled a box about 4 times.
Okay.
So, but other than that, it has been nothing but flatbed, yes.
What was the trucking school?
It's Truck Driver Institute, I believe, in South Bend, Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah.
2012, because I remember in 2005, I guess I sent my wife to, like you said, your wife sent you to trucking school.
My wife is the one that signed me up.
Okay. And I think it was 3,500 at that stage for a 3-week course in Malden, Missouri at SMTDS. And for her to get her CDL, about a 3-week course. How much was it in 2012?
I want to say it was 5,000, if I remember correctly.
And that was paid out of pocket?
Yes, I talked, and we paid it out of pocket, and I paid that back separately, rather than having to rely on, oh, this place will sponsor you and you have to stay there to get your money back.
For a year, yep. That kind of indentured servitude, model that it exists as.
Yeah, it's not. It's not a terrible system, but it is certainly rife with abuse as it is. Yes.
Did you have guaranteed employment when you came out of that school?
No, I did not. They didn't guarantee it, but looking at it in the state of trucking 2012, they had a reasonably wide number of even just flatbed trucking, which is specifically what I was hunting for.
Okay.
That took brand new drivers. That I wasn't that worried about it.
So who was the first company that you went with?
I went with TMC.
Too much chrome, too much chicken lights.
No, that's Two Men Cuddling.
2 Men Cuddling. I hadn't actually heard that one before.
2 Men Cuddling. There's a bunch within the.
Well, they're a pretty nice operation, and they got a terminal down here in Joplin.
Yes,
those black Peterbilts used to be a hot option for a used truck because they were nicely spec'd and was kept clean.
I tried to buy one when I started going an owner-operator, and they wanted way too much for a 1,000,000-mile truck. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And in retrospect, I'm happy I did not grab one of those. So.
How long did you stay with TMC?
I was with them for about a year and a half, just under 2 years. But when I ended up striking out and on my own and bought my own truck, I went with my dad has a steel shop, and he had a guy up in South Bend that ran most of his loads that the small trucks couldn't handle, and talked with him. He had a guy that was trying to sell a truck, bought that truck, and they were able to use the fact that I was in a sensitive safety position to get around their 2-year requirement for insurance.
Okay.
But because I had done delivery driving, even with just at the time, a chauffeur's license, and the fact that I was essentially the head of safety at my dad's steel shop. I was in a safety sensitive position according to their insurance, so beat that by 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a 1994 T600. So it looks like the aerodynamic anteater, according to some, except it was stretched. That was the first thing. It was a mid-roof. Still have it. 3406E. Motor was yanked out of a junkyard Freightliner and had a 13 speed, which is exactly what the TMC trucks had been. So I was comfortable with the transmission. Needed a lot of love and care. The guy I bought it from, he continued on with with the company just as a company driver.
Yep.
And the reason he was giving up being an owner operator was because for the past 4 to 5 years, as I remember it, he had been so busy that he just hadn't filed his taxes. And
Happens.
apparently that's not something that the IRS takes very kindly to. And so he let that go for, let's see here, it had 2.1 million on the frame and 1.2 million on the engine.
On the 3406.
On the 3406.
Yep. How much did you buy it for?
I bought it for $17,250.
Okay.
And I bought it essentially cash, but what I did was I paid him directly. And he also mentored me on running oversized loads because they ran crane beams. So, crane beams for small 15-foot little overhead cranes that you could just slap on a flatbed, to the largest I ever pulled for them was a 127-foot long beam, and that he taught me the ropes on how those customers needed to be serviced and how to make such a turn. And that is why he had a 94 T600. Not the most common vehicle to be stretched, but he had it stretched.
Okay.
So that's what I then drove for.
So he basically found a niche in hauling with the cranes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and helped you along with the process.
And taught me the process of the finer points of oversize hauling.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's often very, very helpful.
Long, not wide.
Yep.
I have hauled a few wide loads, but not, 10 foot, 11 foot, nothing exorbitantly fancy. But very long I very much enjoyed that. I'd like to do more of that again, but apparently nobody seems to feel like paying the amount that it would actually cost.
Should command
to
to go through the process.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Juice should be worth the squeeze, right?
Uh, yes,
Yeah.
certainly.
So you leased onto a company after you bought the truck from
Yes.
TMC?
I did not buy the truck from TMC because
sorry,
it was
after you
overpriced
left.
as all get out. They wanted for 1.3 million milers. They wanted I want to say $60,000.
That's a little bit pricey
And
that stage,
and I was
2012.
not going to be able to work out a handshake deal where I lived 20 miles away from the guy I was buying it.
Right.
Either. So, yeah. I I lucked into the ability to buy it, and over the course of the next year, I paid it off because it was that was the goal. It was $1,250 a month,
Yep.
and that works out to I bought it in I want to say October of 2013. 2013, 2012. Yep, October of 2013, late October. And I went through their insurance for the liability, bobtail, etc. I got a pretty raw rate on the percentage hauled. It was their trailer. Didn't do anything with that. And then I paid it off, and approximately 2 weeks after I had paid everything off, I hauled a load out, and on the way I noticed it puking coolant out and discovered that I had to have an engine rebuild.
Okay.
So I happily had 1 year under my belt that I was able to
As an owner operator.
as an owner operator.
Yep.
With verifiable paychecks.
Yep.
And I opted. I had 3 options to get the rebuild done on, and I went with a Cat Platinum rebuild with the new turbo.
$40,000 odd.
No, at the time it was only 24,000 and some change.
Okay.
With a turbo,
Yep.
gave me 400K transferable warranty, or 4 years, whichever came first. And since I was only pulling 80,000 miles a year, which is somewhat more the goal, because I wanted to work smarter and not harder.
Less miles, more money kind of deal.
Yes, I don't mind going absolutely anywhere, but I very much enjoy getting paid. So, yeah, I went ahead and did that, and another year and a half on, the owner of that company decided that he was really getting towards retirement, and he didn't want to run a company anymore. Too much liability, not enough profit, and so he sold that to a company. A guy that just really all he wanted was the old MC number, and he stayed on, but he barely ran that much anyway. That company wanted me to pull moving vans with a mid-roof stretched truck all across the United States, and I said I do flatbed, and they decided to stop finding loads.
Okay.
So at that point, I went from, well, I'm making a living, not making a ton of money, because most of the extra money that I got, I mean, I made okay, but it wasn't great. I'd paid the truck off. I was making the truck payments. I looked at the finances, looked at what was coming up, looked at the maintenance that I wanted to do versus had done. And I said, well, I certainly won't make it here, so I'm going to either have to jump ship on the company I'm leased to. I didn't have enough saved up because, as most people know, jumping in without a substantial amount of savings, which, by the way, I jumped into with $2,000.
Oh, okay. That's a bit of a risk.
Yes, it was very much a risk,
Yeah.
and I decided
But with a
to.
cash paid for truck, that's often
Well, it was a cash paid for truck, but then I had an engine rebuild.
right.
So now I had, okay, less a year and a half, 24K note, plus their interest, so 30,000.
Yep.
You know, less the 1 year's payment. It wasn't looking great. So I said, well, I could company drive. My brother, my younger brother at the time, he had been driving for, I want to say, about a year-ish before I had. And by this time, he was working at a place near to where I lived. And I said, well, are they hiring? And roughly what's the amount? Took a look at the difference between 1099 owner operator leased on and what he was getting, and I said, well, okay, I can continue to pay off the loan on the truck, hold on to it, just park it, and then see if I can save up. And I said, well, I can try being local. I was trying to be at home with my wife a
Yep.
little bit. I had a young one at the time. She was born 9 months before I started trucking,
Okay.
about. And so I went ahead and did that. That was that lasted about 2 years, and I did shuttle runs for Ruan and easy.
Ruan's the truck leasing company.
The trucking company. Their trucks. I'm driving their trucks. My truck is parked.
Power only.
No, no. They had contracts where their trucks, their trailers, and so there was a steel company where I just ran a shuttle, Indianapolis over to Shelbyville over to Peru, or down to Evansville, or halfway to Pittsburgh and back.
Okay.
You do that in a night. You're home nightly. Not
Yep.
a problem. That
Which works when you got a young one at home.
except I was working at night, so my wife and daughter didn't see me anymore. Really,
Yeah.
their version of focusing on safety, given the fact that I knew what worked and what didn't. I'd run loads cross country that I'd secured, tarped, and literally didn't have to touch. Yes, I did load checks, but at no point were either the chains or the straps loose by the other end of it, whereas what they were running were only running 300 miles at the max, and the straps would loosen every 50 miles.
Yep.
So they required me to leave the straps wound up on the winches, which
I hate.
always loosens itself,
Yeah.
self-destroys. I was slip seating. I was in 2012 internationals, and the associated engine
Breakdown problems with the MX-13
It-
PACCAR motor.
well, okay, it wasn't that bad. They were just gutless. They were slip seated. They weren't treated well. it was fine. Ruan was making money on the contract, obviously. There was no path forward. And the final straw there, after a year and 7, 8, 9 months, somewhere in there, was their overall head of flatbed safety came out to the tarping barns, which they required you to toss your straps in and everything.
Yep.
And he saw me taking off my tarp from my shuttle at the beginning of his day, end of mine, and he saw me hop off the trailer. And he, being a 350-pound guy, and me at the time being a 145-pound guy that knows how to jump off of things and
Had an issue
not,
with the height and safety issue on the.
he said, so, do you make a habit of jumping off your trailer? And I looked at him and I said, yes, I do. Do you have a problem with that? I wasn't any more rude than that, but I think I might have had a little bit more attitude to the tone of voice.
Yeah, the end of the day.
And I went home and I went and I laid down and I said to my wife, as she's getting up and I'm laying down, I said, I either just got fired or this is the last straw for me, and it doesn't much matter which, but I think I'm done here.
Right.
So it's
So that's what
time for me
led
to
you to the company that you're with now.
Yes. And that I contacted the guy that I had I had bought the truck, the gray truck from, and he had been running for, as a company driver, the previous company had been run by the guy he was on with, his uncle.
Okay.
So I talked to him and saw, hey, what's up? And apparently he had fallen off a trailer in Detroit, loading something, tarping it, and he had shattered a bunch of his ankle bones.
Okay.
And he said, well, I'm pretty much out of trucking, but I still have the truck and trailer up by me. They're down in Tennessee. Why don't you go ahead and call him? And I mean, obviously he has this truck. It's literally parked in my driveway. But it had just happened to maybe he'd had the truck just sitting in his driveway for about 2-3 months, something like that. And I talked to Todd. Todd said, well, I ran with you when we did some oversize before. I know you're a good driver. You ran an old truck before. You think you can handle running for me? And I said, well, okay. I'd like to go ahead and sign on with you and put my truck on, but it's going to take another, 4 or 5 months before there's a few things I wanted to do to it before I thought it would be roadworthy again after sitting for almost 2 years.
Okay.
I'd started it twice. It ran. But I said, well, he's got this truck. Why don't I just run it? It's empty. Obviously, you don't have somebody in it. You have an empty trailer that's just been sitting up there for a while. And he said, well, okay, I can do that. And I said, well, all right, I'll run that. I'll be your company driver. Did that. Found he wasn't that bad to work with. It was a pay cut, but it wasn't terrible. And I said, yeah, okay, this is, small operation. Most guys were owner operators. he had just, well, Don at the time and then me as company drivers. And so I did that for about 9 months, and then he ended up talking to me, and he said, "Well, you're a good driver, probably the best driver I've ever had for reporting issues, being able to just fix things, etc."
Communication and
I
Making things-
communicated more than
making things move down the road.
yeah, uh-huh. And he said, "Well, you have an owner-operator mindset." I'm like, "Well, yes, because that's kind of the goal. I'd like to put my truck back on." And he said, "Well, okay, what is it going to take for your truck to be on again?" I said, "Well, about $5,000. And about a little bit later than that, maybe a week or two later, I had a load. I was down in Georgia, and I had what felt to me like constipation that just would not go away, and I ended up going to a hospital, and they told me things like, "You need to remove your gallbladder now."
Ah, okay.
So still, as a company driver, I said, "Well, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do with this truck and everything." I got out of the hospital in the morning, called him, and said, "Okay, look, I'm going to be out of commission for the next 3 months." And I said, I'll get the truck and trailer to you. My wife's going to come pick me up because I'm not having a surgery in Georgia
No,
when I live up in Indiana."
correct.
And my wife came down. I got the truck back to him, and by the time I got recovered, he had sold the truck to somebody else to lease on to him. And he talked to me again and said, "Well, you said it was about $5,000 to, put into the truck. Tell you what, I give you 10 grand. I will not be able, if the truck needs to be sold, you get rights to buy it back at the rate plus $5,000, because that's what he was going to put into it. New
Yep.
tires, a bunch of grease, a few cosmetic extras that just needed done." I said, "Well, okay, that's reasonable. If you're handing me 10 grand and then essentially putting 5 grand into it. If I buy it back at 15, that seems not terrible."
Okay.
And about 6 months later, after I continued to drive that truck for him, and it no problem, I started it up, drove it down, and less than a week later, I was driving my truck that was technically his, as a company driver.
Yep.
6 months later, I lined up the how to do it and set back up as an owner operator. Did that over the course of quite a while. I timeline gets hazy, but my younger brother, the truck driver brother, he needed a job, so I knew that the truck that I had been driving, that somebody else had bought from him, sort of. The guy was terrible at driving it, and apparently blew up 3 transmissions. When it had already had a rebuilt transmission while I had been in it, in less than 3 months. So that guy was no longer with them. He had that truck. I said, "Well, you have an empty truck. I know my brother can drive. Do you want another company driver or not. He hired him on. I drove my truck, now an owner-operator again, leased on. And my brother was doing okay, I guess. And COVID started. And I said, well, okay, what are you going to, the truck that I used to drive was a W9 2001. So what kind of price do you want to give me for that? And I'll just have my brother drive it for me, and I'll give him a set salary. I thought at the time that it was just a motivation question, and maybe the way that the incentives were just not aligning. I thought it might be a good way to get him into being an owner operator. And when he ran for me, I ended up losing money, which is a warning against hiring
family and friends.
Or ever hiring any kind of driver, because they will not be as good at whatever it is that you have been able to do.
Been able to,
yeah. A driver who does not take ownership of their own stuff is never going to be as good. As
and one slip up can cause way more damage than the profit that comes in from hiring said family, friends, or drivers.
Yeah. So after about 6-7 months of that, I had a much harder firing process than my boss otherwise would have had.
Yep.
And then I had a truck that was sitting, that I was making payments on, and it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't a great truck. But a not great truck that's not making money is a truck that needs to get sold, so I sold that and came out of that not up, not down on the truck.
So after 10 odd years of trucking, any sage advice that you could give to anybody that wants to jump into the game?
Don't buy anything. Don't do it. The people that are going to do it anyway either have the drive, have the knowledge. I didn't have any trucking support people around me. I didn't have saved up money. Everybody that says that you need to go in with $50,000 saved set aside in the bank or however, they're right.
It's a good safety net.
They
net
are
to have.
Right, absolutely right. I've got my gray truck sitting. I bought this one a year ago, and I got a killer deal on it. It makes amazing fuel mileage, and it runs great. But it's a 9-speed, and it's not fun to drive. Rates haven't been great. I have missed the boat at every peak. When I got out with the first company I was leased on, that was starting to be a cresting time for rates.
Because it's always been cyclical.
I had been on the downswing, and I had been looking at my projections and said, yeah, I can survive, but I don't want to do this.
Yep.
And so I went and was a company driver as it rose and was at the peak. And when I went back into, and when I should have been making an amazing amount between me and my brother, he wasn't performing very well, and the truck wasn't performing very well, and
it seems like that 1 to 5 truck range is a real difficult scene to navigate in there.
You want to go from 1 to 5. You do not want to go between 1 and 5. Yes, but that's business in general as well, though. One person can do a lot more on their own.
How have
in a
you
lot
been
of
doing
ways.
doing this year and last year? Because we've been in quite a down cycle.
Well, on along with the other truck that I'd grabbed for my brother, I'd bought two trailers. I'd end up selling that as well. I basically just got out of it with maybe $200. I think I made on that. But I ended up with my own trailer for my truck, and it is what I want. It's not a looker. It's not amazing, but
Yeah,
it
it's
has
all right.
been
It
it has
makes money.
been
Makes
quite
money like
quite
any
good.
other one
Yeah.
going down the road.
And with buying my trailer rather than the rental fee, however you want to cut it, I get a better cut with my own trailer
With your
than
own
with
trailer.
his trailer.
Yep.
And so between that and my truck there, which technically I have two of now, but one is just sitting, gathering dust. There's some stuff to the front end I need done. And it was easier. I know the work it needs done. I know how to do the work. I can do the work. I don't have quite the facilities to do it
You
myself.
need a set of tools to.
Yeah, I can afford to, I can afford the downtime, or I can afford the to pay to have somebody do something. I can't afford both at the same time.
Yep.
So I bought the second truck, and it gives me the ability to drive the other one because it was drivable. I parked it while it was running.
What's your plans going forward? Because you're 40,
I am 40.
40,
Yes.
40 years
Correct.
old now. What's your plan? What's your next looking 10 years forward? Do you see yourself in the trucking industry for the next 10 years, 15 years? Sell out, go as a company driver, change paths?
I have a hard time working for somebody, which
That
is
happens.
why where I am works very well. I'm on first name basis with the owner. Last week I had a sticking valve question, and I called him out of the blue on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Can you do that with your owner at your company? Like I think technically Landstar. I'm like,
Yep.
have you ever talked to the owner of Landstar?
No.
No. But there you go. Like there's a level of personability.
Yeah.
And
In small
things there.
companies.
I don't know what the future brings.
What would you like to do?
I would like a lot of money for no work.
$1,000 a mile for a 10-mile run.
Yes.
Once every Monday morning, and that's it.
I'll take Tuesday into Thursday.
Tuesday to
Fine.
Thursday. That's fine.
It can even
fine by
only
you.
be 10 miles. It doesn't matter. I'll leave the truck running if you need me to.
Yeah.
I have a hard time working for somebody else. In trucking, there's living to be made. Question of how regulations go are always a question, especially with the speed limiter question.
Mandate that they're trying to push along.
Which-
Yeah.
Look, if they set it at 65, on the average, I go 62 anyway.
I go
Yes.
70, 75 and get out of the damn hammer lane because I'm coming along, but it doesn't matter either way to me. They just shouldn't. They shouldn't tell people what speed to drive in an 18-wheeler. Tell everybody or nobody.
My other truck is functionally speaking a faster truck. It has better rear end gears. It's got a 13 speed. It's set up. I can run 77. I still run it at 63. Is my average. I'm like, it can do the thing. and I want to be able to do whatever I want to be able to do, and I don't really want to be told
That's the
things.
essence, is to be able to do
Yeah.
what you. But circling back, so you're 40 years old, but what are you really? Are you burnt out with trucking as it is now? For the last 2 years, for me, it's been a cynical journey of whether this is like this is all I know how to do, and I can't see myself going back to a 9 to 5 or slipping into a office job position. Do you want to continue with trucking or?
Well, okay. Are you familiar with the 10,000 hour rule? Okay. Uh, no, 10, 15, some odd years ago, somebody came out with the idea that it takes about 10,000 hours in order to become an expert in any given domain.
Field, okay.
Okay. Well, that roughly on a 40-hour work week works out to be 10 years.
Okay.
So if you put in 10 years in trucking,
Yep.
you should be an expert
In
that
what you do.
field. I've got 11 years in it. Now, you get extra things to it that I've added. We've added trucking itself. The driving is okay, fine.
Pretty mechanical.
Okay, so pretty easy. I can autopilot quite
Yep.
a bit. I put in the time and the effort to make sure that I was doing defensive driving so that if I zone out listening to a book as I'm going down the road in the middle of the night, anything out of the ordinary breaks me out of it.
Yep.
Oh, or I'm already reacting ahead of time.
Okay.
So I put in the work to make that a habit, make that automatic.
But now
I would say
you've mastered
on
the craft.
driving end, okay, so fine. If I'm an expert, I mean, maybe. I'm sure there's people that are better at backing than I
Have
am.
you had a wreck in the last 10 years?
I have had 0 wrecks. I have
Okay.
had 0 accidents.
Yep.
So
1 million, 1.5 million miles. Haven't screwed anything up or killed
Yeah.
anybody. So
okay,
know what you're doing.
layers on top of that.
Okay.
Buying a truck. I've got a good chunk of time in that. I wouldn't quite call it expert, but I think I know enough to say that I did it all wrong. I bought an old truck.
So
I
did
didn't
I.
have any money.
So did I.
I'm trying to support a family at the same time. I did all kinds of things wrong. Now, at this point, I can do darn near anything that I need to. I'm looking at rebuilding my Jakes, and it's not something that scares me. I can go ahead and do that, and I have the tools. I just have to buy the kit and just do it, and it'll take half a weekend, if that. I put in the time to do the mechanical things. I can do my oil changes. I can do my grease jobs. I can do
Yep.
significant work as long as I'm not digging too deep into the engine. Question is facilities more than anything else.
Okay.
Living in northern Indiana now, it's really quite difficult without a garage to do quite a few things.
Come across that a lot where guys live in urban centres or suburban. They can't take the truck to the house and have some form of covered structure, or if not a shop, that they can actually perform repairs. Might not be out of the subdivisions rules or wherever they live.
I'm
Out here,
lucky in
it's
that I
different.
can take my truck home, but I mean my garage door is 7 foot tall. It's just not
Ain't gonna
fitting
poke in there.
the semi.
Yep.
It just isn't, and that's talking to people that are owner operators when they're looking for pieces of property is
But do you-
always. I'm like, look, you've got to look at
A couple
what
of
you
acres,
want to do.
1
in the
acre
future.
minimum, couple of acres. Otherwise, you're going to be paying for.
And look at frontage. I looked at plenty. I
Can
bought a
you get
place.
in there?
I bought plenty of places I could get in there, but I would have to back the truck in.
Yep.
Because it's long and narrow. It's 2 acres, but it's big back there. And you can't get past the garage because the garage and the house are right next to each other. And, like,
There's constraints there.
yeah. And you have to think about the future when you're thinking about those things.
Or
So,
do you see yourself trucking when you're 50?
If I am, I will. I don't know. That's the honest answer is I don't know.
Okay.
I could see myself trucking. However, I think over the past year, I've gotten bored. It's not the same thing as complacent, but it's adjacent, and I'm worried about that myself.
I think they go hand in hand, boredom and complacency.
I think being worried about it helps with the complacency thing, because I
Okay.
don't want to be that guy that you hear about that, oh, well, he hit somebody because he was bored, or
Lost concentration, or started
Yeah.
started not checking the
I know.
permits before you moved out,
but
making the small mistakes because you just got complacent, I guess.
yeah. At this point, I'm sitting on 2 trucks, a trailer, got a house, a certain amount of it paid off. Fine. But it's not like all of the money I make trucking is free. Everything's gotten more expensive.
Yeah.
Remember how I said I missed every single upswing every single time?
Right.
That is the hope right now. The hope is that with everybody going out of business come April 15th, hopefully, that was my prediction a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
that everybody would finally actually realize that with low rates, I mean, this past year has been terrible. I have made my goals of keeping my loaded miles close to $3 a mile.
Okay.
Now, that means I don't do that much driving.
Yep.
Because I'm in general, you do oversized, you're, I hope, getting a lot more than that. But I see oversized loads right now with people expecting them to move for $3.50 a mile.
Or less than that.
Or,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think about doing that. I
Specialized should come with a specialized
Yeah,
charge on
and-
it. It shouldn't be close to
Yeah.
drive down the road rates. Everybody can do that. That's that niche market thing that you.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that the past year I've been fighting. It's been a cheap truck. It's been a.
It's not
you
even
know,
just the
been a
past
good
year.
miles
It's
per
been
gallon.
almost 2 years now that it's been depressed, and after a while, like you grind
Well,
on.
But people are finally realizing that what they bought 3 years ago at the peak of the market can't make it at the trough of the market.
Yeah.
And that's why my far be it for me
To hope that
wish
people-
wish
to
that,
hope
and
that people go out of
people
business.
that
I get it, yeah.
But no, it is good for me because look, I've been there through every trough, and I'm still around. My dad, I can say all kinds of horrible things about working for him, but he owned a steel shop since the 70s.
Okay.
And in 2008, when he laid everybody off, well, he's still around, and it's 2024. And he has a business that, yes, the shop wasn't necessarily producing, but his office was still selling.
Right.
Has in some way, shape, or form kept its doors open for what, let's call it 1970 to now, 50 years.
54
Like
years. Yeah.
in steel, in a small business, hey, that's something. Well, that's an interesting kind of a mark to go for.
Right.
In the same way, trucking, okay, old MC numbers are valuable because they've been around for a while. Well, either that means that people know what they're doing, or it means that somebody had enough money to buy them.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's a pretty good indicator, though, that somebody knows what they're doing. And okay, I've made it through at least 10 years of troughs, really hoping to actually hit the next upswing. Am I counting on it? No. and worst case scenario, I've got a bunch of iron to sell.
Yeah.
And one aluminum deck. But I'd really rather not, because as far as what I see in the future for me, dropped out of college, don't really have a whole lot of marketable skills. That, in a lot of ways, scares me. I see that
I think you
everybody's
could
going
probably
to-
jump into pretty much any market you wanted to and make it okay. You seem like a smart fellow to me.
Yes, but there's a lot of barriers to entry in anything you're gonna try and jump into. And,
True.
And while flattery will get you everywhere,
Or fake it till you make it, which you can get in your forties.
I'm not good at lying. I'm good at faking the things. I'm not good at actually lying.
You wouldn't make a good used car salesman.
No.
Okay.
No, I would tell people to not buy things. I have a hard time getting rid of my own vehicles because I actually tell
Same.
people what's wrong.
The wrong with
them.
it. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So trucking has a future for me, provided I can find something to make it interesting and new for me again.
Okay.
Be that, I go find an oversized customer or two, or
have you thought about starting up your own authority?
I have, but it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Like I've run the dollars, and it just doesn't make sense. At most, I wouldn't mind going on a partnership level with the guy that I'm under right now. He enjoys trucks, but currently he has a different passion.
Yep.
So it's fine for him to pursue that, but with a lack of focus, I feel the business could suffer.
Okay.
And keeping an eye out for that, even if it's just in his best interests, to make sure that the business thrives so that he can do what he's doing. I don't have a problem doing that kind of thing, but there has to be something in it for me too. So, I would have to make sure that the dollars and cents would work.
Right.
Because I am not made of money. Any owner-operator that tells you that they're going to get rich being an owner-operator is lying through their teeth.
The funny one I saw the other day was recent lottery winners. I think it was in a Landline magazine or something trucking related. A couple of truck drivers had come into money of less than $1 million or whatever it was, and all of their plans were to add another couple of trucks and keep trucking. Basically keep trucking until I'm broke
trucks.
again.
Remember what you said, 1 to 5?
Yep.
Well, no. If adding a couple trucks doesn't get you to 5, you're dumb. No. You did it wrong. Is it pay off the truck? Maybe buy a brand new truck or an old truck and fix it all up so it's perfect and literally sit it in a barn so that you, when this one goes down, you can just throw it to a junkyard and drive the next one. Like that would work, but you no, no.
I guess
Yeah.
it all revolves around that old joke about the farmer that that won $1 million, and they asked him, "What are you going to do?" Well, I guess I'll just keep farming until I'm back to zero again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's somehow it's ingrained. They say diesel's in the blood or diesel's in the whatever.
Well, they might say that, but I'm not.
But I've met
I'm
people
an
that have.
atypical case there. I don't have a support system. I mean, as a kid, I remember.
Your parents weren't
seeing-
truckers, were they?
No.
Okay.
No. My father, he owns a steel shop, and technically his degree is in teaching. He taught shop.
Yep.
And math. He's an Episcopalian minister now. My mother, she 7 kids. Bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Yes, that is the correct phrase. Ah, yeah, you've been here long enough. You know that one. She has teaching. Like my grandfather, one he knew teaching, and the other was a farmer. There's no trucking legacy in my family.
Right. Neither is there in mine, apart from one uncle back in New Zealand that did it. To me, it was just an amazing business Well, it was just I wanted to drive big trucks. That was the first impetus. I love driving everything, and then wait a minute, you're going to pay me to drive this thing down the road, and then come across from New Zealand, and it's like, wait a minute, it's like 1.5 or 2 times the income if I change it. This is great. I'm going to do this for a year, and here I am 20 years later, and 10 years as a company driver, and then on my own for the last 10 years, because I got on about the same time that you did. Mm-hmm. And it's just a great way to make money for me without having to work a heck of a lot, but there's risks involved.
Yes. The risks are not going down. Everything is more expensive. Everybody knows that.
The liability is huge.
If they don't know that, they have so much money that they are in the class that are making it more expensive for everybody else. I know that America is supposed to be a classless society, but reality says that that's not true. And
There's always certainly the haves and the have-nots.
yes, the people that are very, very rich are very, very rich and have a vested interest in staying very, very rich.
Yep.
And they will continue to make it that way until they can't.
And they are not driving trucks.
And they are certainly not driving trucks. No. They may own trucking companies, but they don't know the first thing about actually trucking or the business that they're running.
Yep.
If they're running it. That's part of why long term I was uninterested in TMC.
Okay.
As Harold Annette knew how to build businesses. I don't think he knew that much specifically about trucking, but he knew how to build solid businesses.
And at some stage, you get so far removed from. Once you're at 1,000 employees, you're so far removed from the average lives and dealings of
Don't
that.
get me wrong, I think TMC will continue to be a company for quite a long time and everything.
2 men cuddling.
But
Sorry.
yes, that's not even the least flattering of the appellations you could
Too much crime.
use.
Too many chicken lots.
Well, yeah, I don't entirely disagree. I'm very much a fly under the radar kind of an individual. I don't.
That's
like
the best
flashy.
way to be.
I don't like flashy. I don't want to attract attention to myself. It doesn't hurt if you're trying to advertise that people can recognize you, but I'm still. I'm sure some people will say, "Oh, you're not really an owner operator because you're leased onto somebody." I'm sure somebody. I've seen it on the forum there. It just doesn't bother me.
If you own the truck
But-
truck and trailer and you're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep on that, then I say yeah. But what does it matter at the end of the day?
It doesn't bother me what other people's opinion is unless they call me a liar
Okay.
about things that I've said that are factually true. That really gets my goat, and I don't much ignore people outside of people trying to be nothing but negative, or people calling me a liar.
Right.
Those are the two things that will really get me. Just generally speaking. You can be really negative about things. I mean, I'm a highly negative person.
Cynical? Cynical or negative?
I try not to be cynical about things because a cynical person says that nothing can ever get better.
Yep.
Whereas a negative person tries to see all of the problems so that they can overcome them.
Okay.
That might seem like splitting hairs.
Yep.
But I think there's a big difference between the two. And in that, I'm highly cynical about a lot of things in the world. But I hope I'm just being negative. And I try to be only negative rather than cynical in that kind of a framework.
So where's your next stop from here? Pick up some woodworking equipment in Springfield?
Yep.
Your brother?
My older brother has a woodworking business, and I got some tools to pick up. Run that up to him. Go install some screens with him, and then keep on keeping on.
Toodle on back to the house and see what's next week?
Yep. Well, that brother lives literally 2 miles away from me. So,
okay.
Yes. Yes. Both and, but we'll see what the next week brings.
Very good. Anything else you want to add to the conversation?
Not at all.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, upon this, we shall conclude the interview with Andrew Evans from TTR called Scalagrime, and we'll be back again later.